Hello, hello. How is it going, everyone? Thank you so much for joining. How's hack going? Are you hacking this weekend, or are you here just to learn about Python? Please let me know in the chat, or just overall, how is your day going, even if you're not participating? Are you chilling out this weekend, taking a break, or are you all competitive mode and you wanna win some prize this weekend? Happy to know. But thank you so much for tuning in, and in the next 1 hour, we're going to do a quick refresher on Python. If you are new, welcome. I'm so glad you took that step to learn Python. It's a choice of a lot of new hackers. If you're new, it's a very favorable programming language, and I'm going to talk about why. And if you are back here, welcome back. It's a really good time to just get refresher on what Python is and what are the basics, and maybe build something along the way. And I'm going to use something interesting. I'm not going to do it the traditional way of opening the IDE or anything that you use. I'm going to do it such that it's easy for all of us to copy, and it takes minimum time to set things up. All right. So uh, I'm going to talk about what Python is and maybe show you some code around. But you might have to install Python compiler, right? So you might have to you need to have probably Python installed on your system to use it. Maybe you're doing it as I'm talking right now. Maybe you're like, oh no, I forgot to install Python on my computer and I don't know how to install, and it's a whole different mess. You don't want to focus there. So I'm going to use something pretty similar, simple. You don't have to install Python and you still are able to enjoy it and use it in your project. Awesome. So let's get back to slides. If you're seeing this face for the first time, my name is Ashwin Kumar Uppala. I'm a coach at Major League Hacking, and this weekend I'm here to support you throughout the hackathon. Anything that you need about hackathon, outside hackathon, I'm active till all the way to Sunday to help you anything you need to win or have a great experience. Um, I've been using it's more like a hobby language for me. I don't use it primarily at work, but because it's so easy to understand and so easy to build stuff on top of it, it just is a really good hobby language for it. I used it to build a lot of projects in my college, and like just to pass time or create Discord bots or solve very small automations that really take up a lot of my time. So yeah, um, if you're new and you don't know what Python is, it's a pretty cool programming language. Uh, so just for slide's sake, you can obviously Google this stuff, but it's just a high-level general purpose programming language. Uh, Created back in 1992. It's a pretty old language and it is written on C. So for those who don't know C, it's another pretty cool high-level programming language. It's pretty old. C. If you are from India, you might have C as part of your syllabus, because I had C and C++ as part of my syllabus, and it's a decent language. It can get the work done, but with a lot of legwork. So Python was built on top of it with the purpose that we want a program which can be interpreted easily by human language, and also at the same time easily be interpreted without use of a compiler. And I'm going to talk about that in a moment. But mostly you will see Python in web development. Like JavaScript is still there, but there's a huge domain of Python users, and a lot of enterprises already run on Python backend servers rather than JavaScript. I hear Node.js everywhere. I hear React and all kind of JavaScript frameworks, but I've internship at places where the backend was built on Django, which is a very powerful backend framework made on Python. And Flask is a very, very easy and favorable backend framework for beginners. Or I see these people making Flask app in Hackathon because it's much easier to grasp and get things done via that. Apart from that, you'll see them in use of Python in like AI and machine learning and data science, because it's just so easy to get stuff done with Python, and it can take quite a lot of data in it. So if you are coming from another language, if you have learned Java probably or C as your first language. By the way, I'm interested to know what was your first language. For me, it was C. Let me know what was your first language in the chat. But if you are coming from any other language, or there's a high chance you used brackets or a parenthesis to tell this is a block of code and this is, it has a certain function. Python uses indentation. It is good and a bit annoying at the same time. We'll come to that while we are building or writing Python code. Indentation means a tab space or a bit of space when you're writing code, which means here's a block of function or a block of code which does something certain, or think of indentation like invisible brackets. You can use brackets in Python, by the way. That will totally work, but primarily Python depends on indentation. So even if you don't use parentheses, that's fine. Uh, Apart from this, Python has some pretty cool features that it brings to the table. Uh, First of all, it's independent of its own, so you don't have to learn a dependent language. For example, if you're learning C++, it follows a bit of C language, so you can jump to C++. But if you're coming from a C background, you are more confident and are likely to be comfortable with C++. If you are running Rails framework, you need to know Ruby. And if you're trying to learn, I don't know, Kotlin, you're expected to know a bit of Java, right? So for Python, you don't need to know, and you don't need to have any prerequisites. Just you can read English, and that's it, in my opinion. And everything else can be learned. So it is pretty easy to understand what happens in Python code because it's just so easy to read through it line by line. Uh, Unlike C and other native languages, high level languages, which where you write the code and then you compile them with a compiler, it is like a .c file, then it becomes an object file, which is like it's an assembly code. It's not machine learning, but at the same time, it's not high level language. And then you execute it. So it's like you're writing a block of code, you're writing a program. It has to be perfect. Only then the compiler, which converts the high level language into machine language, will convert it all together and then you can execute it. So even if there is a small mistake, your whole program fails. So it won't work. In Python, the code executes line by line. That means every line is executed and then it moves to the next line. So it interprets while it's being converted. So if there's an error somewhere in like line 15, it will execute everything that happened until line 15 and then throw you error like, hey, this is something wrong here. And it's easy to debug code via that and it gets some of the tasks done. It has its benefits, but it also has its drawbacks. But personally, I like it. It's pretty easy when you're making smaller projects with Python. It just gets the stuff done and it's easy to debug it. Python is also platform independent. That means whether you're writing Python code on Ubuntu, I'm on my Mac right now, but if you're writing it on your Linux machine or Windows, it should work just fine. Uh, Python is also dynamically and strongly typed. What it means is a strongly typed language. When you're writing a program in strongly typed language, that means you need to define what is the data type. If you are telling whether the program you're telling is like, this is an integer, you have to mention it, this is an integer, or this variable is a string, you have to mention it. And dynamically typed means you don't have to tell it and let the Python compiler or interpreter identify what it is. So for example, I create a drop down box or I create a input box in a website. Now, if you type a number in it, I want the Python to recognize as integer. But if you write a name in it, it should be recognized as a string. So that's Python is also dynamically typed, and we can use an example of that if we have time later. But just remember, if you don't mention the type of the variable, it will automatically try to identify it. At the same time, you can make it more strict and make it strongly typed. Both works, and that's why it's so cool because we have programming languages like TypeScript, which are strongly typed but not dynamically typed. Python can do both. Uh, like I said, it has a very simple syntax. There's not a lot of jargon, not a lot of technical geeky words. It's mostly English, and we'll make sure to keep it that way for this workshop. And it has a lot of library. Think of libraries as extensions, and Python is the Chrome. Google Chrome, I think, is mostly popular because of its extension library. And just like that, you want to get a small thing done in Python, you don't have to write that code independently. Someone has already written a code and made it into a small package and upload it to the Python library. Just pull that, push that, add a single line which imports that library, and it will get your work done. Cool example is like machine learning. You don't have to write the whole machine learning code. All you have to write is import the package which has that pandas or keras or TensorFlow, and the rest of your program will understand that, oh, I already know machine learning and this is how I can do it. Uh, to show you how Python interprets code in a more graphical way is like a two-step process. You write your code. It first step, it take the assembler, converts it into an object code. All right, and then that object codes line by line gets converted into machine code. So it's like while you're executing it, it's converting and executing at the same time, line by line, by the way. Awesome. So uh, we are going to focus on two major things in for this workshop right now: variables and strings. So if you are new to programming language, a variable, like the word says, is a variable it's a type of just data which can be anything. Uh, think of it as an X, and it can hold any value. Now, if you are coming from different languages, you have to mention what type of variable it is. It's an integer. If you want to hold numbers into X, is it a string? If you want to hold names or addresses in X, you can do the same in Python, or you don't have to mention them at all. If you just type X and write anything that you follow, the Python will automatically identify what we're talking about and will automatically add that type into it. That's why it's called dynamically typed. Um, I'm going to show what that means in a second. Just want to go through all the slides before we jump into the IDE, because then we're just going to have some fun. We're going to code some cool stuff. The next type we have numbers and strings. So these are two types of variables that we have. Numbers are integers, which are from, all the way negative to all the positive numbers that you see. If you add a decimal, it becomes a fraction, but it's called float. The term is float. Why? If you ask me, I'll explain. Otherwise, there's a long history why it's called float. But the next data type we are interested in is in strings, which are basically all the characters. Numbers can also be strings if you combine them with letters. So if it's like A1, B2, C3, that's a string. 1, 2, 3 could be a number, could be a string too. Depends on our use case. For example, passwords are strings. Even though you put numbers, you could have a password all of numbers. It's still identified as a string. String is basically just a series of characters. Now, you assign a name to these numbers and strings, which is a variable, and that variable is then assigned to a memory. Basically, you tell, hey, X has my name. So X is the place where my name is stored. And numbers and strings are also dynamically typed. Let me go ahead and see if we can try some numbers and strings and run our first Python code. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull up a new browser here. So instead of opening an VS code and starting presented, it's okay. I'm happy. I'm okay doing that, but I want to make it more fun. I want to make it like make sure you all can follow along with me. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open GitHub. So let me go ahead. So this is my GitHub. You should be able to see it. Uh, I hope all of you have GitHub with you. You have a GitHub account set up or you have used it. It's okay if you don't. You can use VS Code, but I wanna skip the time of installing Python. I have Python installed, but it can confuse you. So for the record, I'm just doing it so anyone can do it without installing Python. So I'm gonna go create a new repository just for this workshop. Let's call it I'm the owner, And let's call it Python intro to Python. All right, this should be fine. Let's make it public so you all can see it. Let's add a readme. I don't. Oh, no need of this. Just put in license so you can fork it and you can use it. So I'm gonna go ahead and create a repository. Oops, my browser is lagging a little bit. All right, you all can see this, right? Cool Z's. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna click on code right here, and there's something called code spaces. It's basically a virtual environment. So I'm gonna create a code space on my main branch, and let me start sharing this. It opens a new tab, and it's gonna do some magic and open a VS Code looking lookalike in browser IDE. Let me know if my voice is lagging or something because I can see some frame drops. Make sure my browser is not overflowing the memory. I have a lot of RAM on this system. So it's not the problem of my system. It's like the Brave browser is just not handy at times. So this thing looks like VS Code a lot. It is actually VS Code, And what it's gonna do is open my repository in me, and hopefully I don't have to install Python to get this started. So you can follow along with me, even if you don't have Python. If you are on another operating system, you don't have to spend time setting things up. So let's see, I'm gonna go here to something called extensions. And just like Chrome browser, VS Code also has extensions. So I'm gonna click on Python and see if we have Python installed. All right, Python is not installed, but there's an option to install it. Whoa, that's weird. Okay, we are connected. Let's go install. Yes, please install the code spaces. You see, there's a terminal at the bottom. There's on the left hand side, it's just a toolbox, and I'm gonna close this terminal, open it later. Oh, okay, I have to refresh probably. Am I still connected to internet? Yes, I am. All right, waiting for this thing to get done. So let's pick some soft background music, because why not? All right, let's go install Python. There are a lot of other extensions. If you see bottom, you have C++, we have Jupyter, Pylance. Some of them are for Python, some of them are for C++ and other languages. Jupyter is like for machine learning notebook if you want, but all right, Python is installed. We're interested in this. I'm gonna close this tab. And on the left hand side, these are the files that I created. Remember, README and other stuff. So I'm gonna create a new file and call it app.py. So Python file ends with py. All right, .py. All right. So our first Python application. Whoops. Python Pylint. We don't want it, but okay, fine. I'm gonna install it anyway. That's fine. Pylint is like a linter which makes sure I am following the correct syntax or the rules when I'm building Python programs. So, um, first we talked about variable, right? So it can be X and it could be an integer like int, or it could be just X. If I type 5, it will realize that X is 5 and it will assign X to 5. Whoa. Yep. You see, the app is green, which means I don't have any problems and I don't have any issues. Uh, so X is 5, and I want to see if this is working or not. To print, to basically display the value of X to my screen after executing it, I use something called print. You see, VS Code is intelligent enough to tell you the definition of print. So the moment I type print, it tells me like, oh, print does this, and you can do that. But I'm interested in like printing this thing. So let's see if I can run this. There's a small play button on the top right. I can use that to run the Python file, and it will open the terminal for me, run this app, and you can see it displays 5 here. And how do I know this 5 is a number and not an integer? I can type, is it type? I guess it's type. Yeah, if I print this, it should tell me it's int. So print is the keyword you use to print things to the console here. Is it too small? I think I should increase the size. This should be good. Oh, wait. Instead, I can just font zoom in. Let's do it one more time. One more time. Yeah, that should be good, right? So if I type print, so if I type X now is hello world. Hello world. And if I try to do print, oh, why can't I? Yeah. I'll get an error for some reason. Do you know why? Yeah, invalid syntax. Remember, characters are supposed to be string. Now, what Python is doing is it can't tell what is X. Is it H? Is it E? Is it L, L, O, or all of these? I need to tell the Python program that all of this is X. So, in any language that you do, a string is mentioned by double quotations. Anything between those double quotations, the program will think it's a string, a series of characters. So if I clean this up, I think I can, yeah. If I try to run this again, oh, that's weird. I'm missing a module. It should not happen. Let me try that again. Oh, that's interesting. Let's try single quotes. What am I missing here? Constant name X does not form proper case naming style. Let's see if now this won't work. Oh, my music says stop. Oh, okay, let's change the music. Okay, let me, instead of this, try to print it directly. So let me, hello world. If I do this, let me clear. Wait, there's something wrong. Oh, there you go. Huh. This is definitely correct. It's like, okay, let me open the local VS Code. is not an invalid syntax. I think the Python is missing some modules. Hmm. Let me open a fresh VS Code in my system instead. Uh, New workspace. Oh, what problem is it? Let me just pick a. That's weird. But let me show you what I'm trying to achieve here. All right, let me share this screen while I bring up a new IDE. Let me open a new folder. Should have, yeah, there we go. GitHub. Let's create a new folder here. Intro to Python. And open this. I don't need that. X is hello. Yeah, okay, local one is working. All right, let me start a new screen share then. And there we go. Oh, this one. Yep, we are back. This one is working just fine. Okay, so this is my local VS Code, and I was trying to avoid this. For some reason, my for some reason, the code spaces one is behaving weirdly. So this time X is a string. So if I do Python, I'm using third version, Python 3 version, followed by my Python app name. It should print hello world, and it's working just fine. You can see it. Right, let me close this. All right, so what we're trying to achieve here is, let's try different strings. And so if I try ask, hey Python, what is the type of X? Like, is it a string? Is it a number? Is it an integer? It will tell me it's str. That means it's a string. So if I do, I can ask what is X, or I can directly ask what's hello world. So that also works. hello world. And it's still a string, so I don't have to use X anymore. I can directly pass the string or I can pass it via a variable. All right, so I can ask, hey, what's this? And I can ask at the same time, what is 12? And what is the type of 12.0? So this should be a string, this should be an integer, and this should be a float. And there you go. It says it's a string, the second one is an integer, and the third one is a float. It's a class, and what is class? We're going to come to that quick, but think of it like it's a class of float, or it's a type called float. Uh, I can also use multiplication. So if I want to type hello world 2 times, so I'll do x. Multiplication is used like the asterisk mark, which is like shift 8 if you're on Mac. So if I do this, it will print x 2 times, where x is hello world. So if I clean this up, hello world, without space, of course. If I add a bit of space here, oops, like this, and do it again, hello world with a space. So it's printing x 2 times. We can do all kind of we can play with numbers like that. Let's try something more complex. Let's go beyond variables and strings, and let's try a list of things. All right. So in Python we have lists. We have list. We have dictionary. We have tuple and set and more on. These help you create a list of things. So if you have like a list, so I can let's call it a shopping list. All right. And list starts with the square brackets. So I have shopping list. So let's start with bread. And remember, bread is a string, so I have to enclose it in double quotations. So my GitHub Copilot is doing it for me, but I'm gonna write it. So yeah, let's go for milk, followed by a comma, which is a new object. Let's go with bread. And eggs is fine. So each object in the list is separated by a comma, and all of these are strings. It can also be an integer, so I can have 12, but it does not make sense in shopping list. So let's have this. If I want to print the shopping list, I will go and you can see the shopping list is printed. I want to ask, what type of variable is shopping list? What is this thing? It's a list, right? If I want to have something which is like uneditable, so right now shopping list is this, and then I can do like shopping list and like add juice to it. And if I then print it, oops, copy paste. Oh, not type. Let's remove type. Let's remove type. So I have had a shopping list and then I added something. All right. It added something. Maybe I don't want someone to edit my shopping list. So now I can make it a tuple. So if I want to make it a tuple, I have to enclose it in your, I call it the curly braces. What do you call it? Parenthesis. Now if I try to do it, oops, you will see I'll get an error. Oh, that's the error. Oh, still able to do it? That's weird. Tuple should be read only. Why am I able to edit it? Or because maybe I reused it again. So tuples are also kind of like lists, but if you don't want them to be edited, for some reason I'm able to edit it. Oh, I overwrote them. I cannot delete a tuple. And then we have sets. Set is like if you want everything to be unique. All right. So it's like for set, covered it with your parentheses, these ones. And if this thing has like a repetition, it won't print. It won't print. So if you want like only the unique values, then make it a set. And we have finally dictionaries. So dictionaries has, wait, you're able to see my screen, right? Yeah. Dictionaries, a key value pair. So to make it a dictionary, you do the same as a set because dictionary also are unique. So let's call it dictionary. Or let's call it my dictionary. Oh, my underscore dictionary. And again, it's followed by angular braces and it has a key and a value. So if I call it bread, this is the key and the value should be 2. So 2, I want maybe 2 breads. 2, and let's have eggs. Let's have it a dozen eggs, and let's have banana. Let's have 6 bananas. Now dictionary has a key and a value. So if you are doing something like this, then you should use dictionary. Oh, I forgot to print it. Print my dictionary. Oh. So you see, maybe I just want how much bread do I want? So I will add the key and Python will tell me the value. So I am asking print inside my dictionary, what is the value of bread? So if I go ahead, 2, you can see it, right? I want to make it more easy to read. I can add a string here. The key is followed by a plus sign. So it will print the key is followed by this value. If I go ahead, oops, probably it's a comma. Yeah. So it added the key is 2. Or I can add the bread is 2 without anything that like that works. Awesome. So just to recap what I wrote right now, let me, oh, I have to share it again. No problem. This is what I just did. So not this one. Yeah, there you go. So if you want to take a quick screenshot of your, oh, it's not on. Yeah, this is what I just covered. List, tuple, dictionary, set. We have more, don't worry. All right, it looks like my code spaces worked again. I had a buggy. I had some wrong extension installed, but I'm gonna use code spaces just so I can push the changes for your reference. All right, this is done. Next up, we also have, oh, let me just close the VS Code. So we can add conditions because a lot of programs or everything that we make is made up of conditions. We can have very simple conditions in Python. So if I ask Python like if something is less than this, do this, else do that. So coming back to code spaces now, if let's do 3 is greater is 3 is less than 4, then so if 3 is less than 4, then let's do yes, then print yes, else print no, oops, it's a string. Observe, I'm putting a colon here. Wait, let me increase the size. Observe, I'm putting a colon here, which means a condition is starting. And in another language, in another programming language, you would do something like this. You would do, let me add. You would do something like if 3 is less than 4, then you would add a bracket, and then you would add a condition. Like you would add a condition here, right? So these brackets means this condition is inside this block, inside the if. In Python, I'm using indentation. You see this space here? This space means this print value is inside this condition. So that's what indentation means. Typically, indentation is like 6 spaces. So 1, 2, 3, 4 or 6 spaces. But you can change it in your settings. But this print is inside this else condition. So 3 is less than 4. Yes, it should print yes in this case. Let me clean this up. Press the play button. Yes, it prints yes right here. If I do it the opposite, if 3 is greater than 4, no, that's false. So it should print no. There you go, it prints no. Let me check if it's okay. Let me increase this. Yeah, this should be more visible to you. Yeah, so we can make it more dynamic. We can make it more cooler. So I can have like, hey, enter an input. So input some value. Let's call it X. All right, which is a string. So I want to have input a string, and if X is greater than 10, print greater, or let's print X, comma, is greater than 10. Else, I don't have to put the X else value, it's just the other. Print X is less than 10. All right, this should work, I guess. Let's see. Oh, I forgot to X equals to. So I'm taking an input, which is a string. Oh, no, let me remove this. Yeah, it's the other way. So I'm taking an input, converting it into a string and storing it in X. This should work. Yeah, you see, it's not giving an output. It's waiting for my input. So if I put 11 here, oh, it's weird. Oh, of course, it has to be an int. My bad. I'm comparing a number. You see, you observe one thing. The program worked till this line, and after this, it was able to take the input. And the moment I put input, it tried to compare it with an integer, and it told, "Hey, I have taken a string, but I'm comparing it with an integer, so I'll throw an error." So it was interpreting and executing line by line. Unlike another program, it would throw an error directly. Awesome. Let's try one more time. Now it's an integer. So I'm taking 11. 11 is greater than 10. That's right. So what if I put 9? 9 is less than 10. But what if I put 10? Obviously, we missed that condition, right? So we can use if else loop in that case. So we can use if else if else if. We can add one more condition. So if X is greater than 10, do this. Else if X is less than 10, then tell me this. And then I'm going to add else. Print X is 10. So if I play this, oh, what is this? Yeah, there you go. There's something else wrong. Run it again. Oh, it's not else if in Python, it's elif, which is a short form for else if. So if I put 10 now, it will tell 10 is 10. If I put 13, 13 is greater. And if I put 1, it will tell it's less. So that's how the conditions work. Back to the slides. Next up, we have loops. So the same condition over and over again. You know, I had 3 conditions now, so I used else, if else, but I want it for 10 times. That's pretty tiring. Or if I want to use the same things over and over again, like printing the multiplication table or counting the numbers and stuff like that. That's where you can use loops. So it's pretty easy. There are two types of loops. It's for again has different types. It's think of it in English, all right? So for while the condition is satisfied in this condition, keep doing this. And then another one is while, which is means keep doing this while the condition is true. So in a for loop, it will first check the condition. Oh, I'm back. Sorry, that's my browser crashing for some reason. Won't happen again, but let me start my screen share again. Awesome. We are almost near time, so I'm not going to go to make it very complex. Perhaps a homework for you. So, loops, cool stuff. You can have loops and create a condition, for example, until you reach 10, add every number. So you can have a factorial, or you can have like print the table of 2, just multiply it with every the number, or make it a bit more realistic. Uh, Count how many hackers have attended this hackathon until you reach the end of the line. So I can create a loop like that. Next up, we have functions, which is basically everything I taught you, but in a block. So a function, I want to create a function to do something very certain. Do addition, multiplication, or factorial, something mathematic, or could be anything. So you can create a function and it can be reused anywhere in your code. And it starts with the word def, which is you're defining a function, def, and you can call it by name. In this case, it's called addition. So every time I type the word addition, uh, it does the addition of those two things. So if you observe carefully, functions is happening over the variables, which is not defined. So A and B, we don't know what A and B is, and that's the exact point. It's same as the functions that you do in maths. If you're a math student, and if you're not, here I'm defining what this function should do. It should add A and B. And later in my program, I'm adding these two things by supplying it 1 or 2 or 6 or whatever. But in function, it's arbitrary. Uh, then we have classes and objects, which is a superset of function. For example, think of class as a class in your school. So if you are in your science class, every student in that class is a science student or is studying science. So all of you have common in one thing in common. That is, all of you are science students. If you are in a musical class, all of you knows how to play or sing. That is one thing common in you. Same in programming language or object-oriented programming, where you create a class, all of them are supposed to have something in common so that you can define them as a class. And in class, each one of you is a student. Similarly, in programming language, every element that is reusable or has that property of the class is called an object. Think of it like, oh, I'm going to create a class which is called cars. All right. So the objects are obviously cars. They can have different properties like blue car, red car, but all of them are cars at the end. That's a class. So these are a couple of data types and styles we have in Python, and generally they're followed in every programming language. Uh, let's learn something. I have written a lot of code. I want you to write something. I got some pretty cool predefined programs here. See if you can understand what's happening behind them. I'll explain line by line, and I'll also try to write for the time that we have. But at the same time, I'm going to drop the check-in link if you haven't checked in. But while I drop the check-in link, I want to see whether you're what's happening in this program. Obviously, the answer is right there. But are you able to figure out what's actually happening in this program? I'm gonna come to that while I grab the check-in link for you. So make sure you have checked in for the event. All right, what's happening here? Were you able to figure out? Here we are obviously typing all the prime numbers for a given range. In this case, it's 25 to 50, but we can change it and it will totally work. How is it working? Let me pull up my VS Code, and this should probably be the last program for the day, I promise. So I have to stop sharing this. And okay, where are you, VS Code? There you go. All right. Oops, no, not this one. So, oh, you cannot see my screen, of course. There you go. You can see my screen, right? All right. Let me remove this. So, to first thing, we are going to create. So hash is a comment. It does not get executed. It's just for our own reference. So I'm going to create a program to print prime numbers within a range. So the range should be from start, let's call it 1, to end, let's call it 10. All the prime numbers which are in this range. So I'm going to print prime numbers between start and end are. So I'm going to start a for loop here. My GitHub Copilot is really helping me cheat. I'm not going to do that. All right. So for, let's say, a variable called number, as long as it's in the range of start to end plus 1. So as long as this is there, don't forget the colon. If so, the condition for being a prime number is that the number has to be divisible by 1 and itself, and that's it. All right. So if the number is greater than 1, then again we'll write another loop. So while it is again that number I is in range from 2 to the number that we have given, what should we do? We should check whether the number is divisible by 1. What is this line? So this line means, it's slightly overwhelming because I'm short on time, but what it means is basically whether 3 when divided by the number I, or the number when divided by I should leave any remainder or not. So number by I, let's say 4 by 2. 4 by 2 is 2 and no remainder. So this percentage symbols tells whether this thing is perfectly divisible or not. If it's perfectly divisible, it is not a prime number. 4 is not a prime number, right? 4 is divisible by 2. Let me show you how it works. So if 4 is 4 divisible by 1, yes. 2, yes. 3, no. 4, yes. It's not a prime number. What about 5? Divisible by 1, yes. 2, nope. 3, nope. 4, nope. 5, yes itself. 6, nope. But it is, and so on. So 5, oops. 5 should be a prime number because it's divisible by itself until its own number. So let me go ahead and once you find, the moment you find it's divisible by any other number, just break it. Just stop the loop and tell me that, hey, it's not a prime number, and move to the next number. So the next number will be, just print it if it's not divisible by anything. So what's happening here, let me show you line by line. So what will happen is first, it's too long. First, okay. So first we'll starting with 1. Let's start with something else. Let's start with 1, that's fine. So number is starting from start to end. So first number will be 1, and number is greater than 1, no. So it won't run throughout this program. It won't print 1. Next number becomes 2, greater than num, yes, goes inside this loop. For I, now I is in range from 2 to 2 because our number is 2. So 2 will try to divide by 2. It's equal to 0. That's correct. That means there is no remainder. So it will break again. And let's go to 3. So num becomes 3 in the next loop, and I becomes 2 and 3, and I tries to divide. So we do 2 by 3, that's not 0, and then we do 3 by 3, that's 0. So when 2 by 3 is not 0, it will print it immediately. So it should print 2 and 3. Let's see how it goes. Oops. Oh, no need of semicolon. Here too. Oops, we got some issues. Invalid syntax. Oh, it's a colon. Yeah, that's true. Only if it's equal to 0, then you should break. Yeah, indentation is something you have to be very careful about. Yeah, there you go. These are the prime numbers 2, 3, 5, 7. Because the moment it sees in this line, this is the main logic at after all these 2 lines. So the moment number that is 2 is divisible by 2 itself, it is 0, then just print it. Otherwise, the moment it's not 0, it won't break. So, make sense? Awesome. Oh, my photo. I'm back. Awesome. I know that's a lot. There's a lot. I'll make sure to post this code in the repository for your convenience. But just take a screenshot. It's available everywhere. And honestly, start with something small if you're new to Python. But it's fun to play with numbers. Why not? Awesome. We are on time. I will let you continue hacking. But if you're curious and want to learn more, need more resources about Python, just drop me a DM in the Discord. Just tag me and ask, hey, I want to learn more. I want to build an actual project like a to-do list or something, or a website from Python. Then I'll drop more resources. Sounds good? Awesome. Have a great day, folks. Happy hacking.